Probably one of the more complex, but also the most useful pieces of our system is the ability to create scheduled workflows or proctored testing for test sessions that are administered by a proctor. The very first step in doing so is a client must be enabled to have scheduling. This is something that's done behind the scenes. It's done by your administrator. So if you want this done, you need to contact someone to turn it on. And it's a couple clicks of the button on our side. But the important parts of scheduling are we need to set certain parameters at our test centers, like late cancel timeframes, are lockdown browsers included? Do the proctors get any type of report when the test is completed? So some of those settings, when the reminders happen, what the radius of scheduling is. And this screen is not visible to most users, if not probably just a handful of users have this, but we would turn these features on and your client would be set up for scheduling or proctored testing. So that's step one, happens behind the scenes. The next step is authoring within the workflow. So I'm going to author a very simple scheduled proctored workflow so that you can see this behave. So I'm going to create a workflow from scratch, and I'm going to name this Proctored Demo. So what we're going to do is set up a testing session that is proctored. Those are using PAN PSI test centers so that someone can oversee the testing experience. We're going to create that workflow. And then a step will occur or will exist in your setup that doesn't exist in a lot of people's setup, and that is the ability to create a proctored session. It usually begins with an email, so I will create an email that says invitation, and just copy that invitation value. And within the actual email, we can insert a token to send it to the tester, copy the administrator's email, and the subject will be invitation to schedule. And inside of this, we will create a token to the workflow URL. So we would say something like, hey, tester's full name. By using that token, please click on the below link to schedule your testing. And then there is a URL to launch the workflow. And it's as simple as that. Oh, sorry, from address, we'll send it from the administrator's email, a little validation there. And we have an email step. So if you've never built a workflow, every workflow has a beginning and a terminating step, and this activity is the beginning step. After I send that email, I want to link it to this proctored session. So all of the background that we set up for rules and resources that can be allocated and late cancel timeframes and all that, that's all set up behind the scenes. So we will call this proctored schedule activity. All right, and we'll copy that into the activity descriptions. And then here's something, this is default text. We don't give many people the ability to change this, but this is, don't bring certain things to the test center. Here are the IDs that you need. So this is information that goes to the candidate that's very helpful to them. Here's the exam conduct. So there's no ambiguity when they enter a test center what's going to be expected of them. Near the end of this setup, we can title the appointment. Maybe it's entry-level testing or something like that. We can choose the duration of the test. So you need to know the test that you choose, how long it's going to take. It's usually an hour or greater. We'll call it an hour and 45 minutes. We're going to take an assessment, and then you pick the assessment that you want to be taken at the test center. This particular account has access to our entire public catalog. We've chosen the barrier to success, to employment success inventory, an hour and 45 minutes. If it requires anything special, you can check those boxes. If there are materials that need to be delivered at the test center, pencils, highlighters, calculators, anything like that, those can all be set up. By default, they're set up to not deliver. And then allowing reschedule on certain events are all set up as well. If there is a reschedule, do they resume the assessment or do they restart the assessment? We'll resume, and then some activity window options. So in the end, I created a really complex workflow with a simple email, a simple proctored schedule activity, and the last thing I really have to do to connect them is to click on the beginning cell and end on the terminating activity and say email sent. So we just need to put an activity to connect them. You can put rules in here if you want, but there really are no rules associated with emails being sent. So we'll just call result status sent here. And then you will see this lights up in red, which says it's a terminating activity. You can create an email on the back end that when they're done, it says thank you for your participation in this process, but really not necessary. So that's the way to set up a proctored session. You would validate that this is working or not working. There are no validation errors. I can then save it and publish it. And once it's published, which you click on the arrow here to publish, it's now available for you to assign to candidates, and they would get that invitation email followed up by the ability to schedule. That's a little bit about setting up scheduled proctored workflows to use Pan PSI test centers.